Thanks for having us today. It's great to be with you. And before we get started, just again want to thank those healthcare workers, especially the ones on the front line, and our teammates that are out there on the front line as well as in production, making sure we do everything to defeat this COVID virus. But it's really important as we look at getting the country back to work. And as everyone knows, it's a top priority everywhere. Testing is key. And what we're finding is that two things are important in testing. The first is accuracy. And what you did mention is our test has 100% specificity. And that's what's important about that is it prevents false positives. What we need to make sure is when we're testing people for the antibodies as they're building up immunity is to ensure that if they do in fact test that they do have immunity to COVID, that it's accurate. And that's why I've said that good is simply not good enough. And it's important that we're the only test out on the market right now that's 100% specificity. And that's really key because it shows you accuracy. The second category, it's going to be around access. So how quickly can we test people? And the great thing about Ortho and some of the other companies is that you're now starting to see the scale across the United States where you can do several million tests per day. So just use Ortho for an example. We're in over 1,000 hospitals and labs, so we can run 4 to 5 million tests on any given day. So that's going to be the other thing is access of patients or the population can be tested.
If I'm a consumer, though, Chris, how do I know or how do I get your test? In other words, if I call my doctor and say, I want to be tested for antibodies to see if I'm immune, it seems like there's so many choices. You can go to CNBC, you can go to your doctor, you can go to a hospital, you can go to the labs, and we don't know exactly which tests they're administering. Can we ask for certain tests?
Well, you could ask for a test, but depending on where you go to a clinic or to a lab, they may have one or multiple tests at this point. As you mentioned in your opening, is that we are now partnering with Quest. So we'll be able to run our tests all across the country on Quest labs. And we're continuing to work not only with your local regional hospitals, but other reference labs and large testing facilities like CTS. CTS, to give you an example, is owned by the American Red Cross and Vitalant and OneBlood. And they test about 70% of the U.S. population's bloods for donors. So this will be a start to open new avenues for patients to be able to go get tested specifically with our test.
Chris, I guess so many brilliant private sector companies like yourselves in America that have all worked separately in their own ways to ramp up testing ability. And that's allowed the U.S. to play catch up on its testing perhaps quicker than otherwise might have been possible compared to, say, a country like the UK, where there isn't the same level of private sector participation. On the flip side, however, is there an issue that there are so many different types of tests across America that we don't really necessarily have a universal answer of where the outbreaks are, where we should be going back to work, where there is immunity?
Yeah, look, I think initially there was a lot of noise or confusion in the market because the FDA obviously wanted to react quickly and allow tests to come in to be able to be used. But initially there was only a notification process through the FDA. Now they've put in place this emergency use authorization. And it's really important that you ensure that that company has utilized that through the FDA because the FDA basically gives you a stamp of approval to be able to release your test. I think other countries were a little slow to move in that. And I think that if you look back a couple of weeks ago, some of the problems the UK had when they brought in some of these point of care tests, it just didn't have high accuracy levels. And the issues weren't whether these tests were there or that they weren't sensitive. It's whether they had this specificity, which is the concern about preventing these false positives. I do believe now governments around the world are starting to see the quality in the test as the large manufacturers like ourselves and others are starting to come to market. And what you're seeing is that in most cases, these are high throughput tests that run on automated blood analyzers. And so these are analyzers that are already in place. And so now it's just about shipping the test. You don't have to necessarily place the analyzer. You can just ship the test. So I think you'll start to see this rise very quickly. But I come back to it's going to be really about access. And I think the next step is ensuring that teammates, our workforce that works inside any given company has the ability to get access to that test.
Chris,
and I think that's only started. I'm sorry, please.
No, I was going to say thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's good to be here, and you guys have a great day.